Peter, what's your sense about how the markets would be looking at the 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 Fed minutes? Because the last couple of days there has been a flurry of activity with European markets cracking quite severely yesterday, as did Asia, but the US markets held out pretty okay.
Well, exactly right. And good morning. I think that the whole momentum at the moment has certainly been stronger US dollar. The equity markets really haven't tailed off at all. We've seen general sell-offs across, as you mentioned, the European side and certainly across some of Asia. And I think everyone's focus is very, very glued to what happens as far as Jackson Hole. And I feel as though we've got, those strong unemployment numbers. The overall growth of the US economy has been really shot the lights out. So let's see what the Fed is prepared to release or take us on a little bit of a joyride.
Yeah, the only point is, Peter, I think the Fed has been preparing investors for a while now about any possible tapering. And as of now, it's the market's assumption based on the Fed minutes, which were divergent at best, but yes, more hawkish than what the latest meeting was. So do you reckon that the Fed would, as the Jerome Powell, as he has always done in the last 12 months, soothe frayed nerves? Or could he say something that could actually spark volatility, if not anything else?
Well, I think he's got to be very careful with his wording. We would have expected to see, in some ways, the New Zealand market to really look at raising rates this week, and that was a false alarm. So I think that the Fed's got that in mind also as far as Delta variant. It's a very fluid situation, Niraj. So that's where I think Jay Powell has got to be very careful with his commentary, and any phrases that he does use need to be very, very guarded, because it could spook the markets a little bit. We've seen the general theme as far as where the US dollar's traded, what's happening on the situation with Europe, and of course those ongoing COVID sagas, and a return to more lockdown. So that's where I think they've got to be very careful, and it's really very much a day-to-day proposition for the Fed.
Yeah, it is day-to-day proposition, and for now, the US is also not breathing easy when it comes to some key states. Actually, you mentioned the dollar index or the dollar, Peter, that's seen a bit of a bump up, really, and that's made the other markets a bit nervous. What's your sense here?
Well, it's sitting at around about 93.5, Niraj, so that's where it's had a very strong move to the upside. Could it be a 94 handle? I mean, these are... I don't think it's going to surprise a lot of traders. You've seen that general softness across euro, yen nearly at 110. You've got the British pound being sold off strongly. Aussie dollar, only a couple of months ago, 5 or 6 months ago, we were going to break 80. Now you're looking at about 71, 71.20. So that really gives some sort of demonstration as far as how much softness we've seen. And all of that needs to be, I think, considered from a trade perspective.
Yes, indeed. It does need to be. One final question, Peter, and that is when it comes to commodities, which have seen a deep crack the last couple of sessions. Metals have gone off, and crude too is certainly off the boil. In fact, as I heard you say, very close to a 20% decline from the peaks.
Well, exactly right. It's been an enormous short to be across base metals and, of course, the energy sector. What we've seen in crude, Niraj, absolutely, the last week and a half have been one-way traffic, and many traders are rubbing their hands with glee. So it's been a solid sell-off. Will that momentum continue to the downside? We've got Brent sitting at that 66.80 handle. You've got WTI ready to crack through $64. So there's every chance you could be, by end of month. Why can't you see a 61 handle for Brent? Why can't you see a $60 handle for WTI? It's very achievable, and I think that softness may continue. So I think that's what traders are looking at the moment, and that's why we're very conscious as far as Jay Powell's rhetoric and any surprises coming out of Jackson Hole.
Yeah, Peter, just one quick 30-second answer, if you will, before we wrap up. What about the other commodities? Iron ore has plunged the last couple of days. Steel has come off as well. What happens to industrial metals?
Well, those base metals have been very strongly sold off. And again, everyone's short metals. So that really gives us some sort of concern. What's the storyline with China? What's the story as far as the growth going forward? And I think that unknown, which spooks markets, that's the spook as far as the lockdown. Is that really, where do you find your footing? So that really, I think, has taken traders by surprise. And if you're a trader looking at, shorting the market over the last week or so, it's just been absolutely electric, Niraj.
Yeah, it has been. But Peter, really appreciate you joining in and giving us some perspective about what's happening around. Jackson Hole becomes so much more important than what was thought maybe earlier. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Niraj. Take care.
Well, that's Peter McGuire. Looks at currency, commodities, the Fed with a lot of keen eye, and therefore his opinion today of all days was very, very important and crucial to get you.